I have 7:31, so I will
Sorry.
call the meeting to order. We have present Mike, Bob, Susan, Jean, Marge, Deb, David, and Richard. The recording would like us to say that. So,
Are you going to appoint Mike to vote for Tiffany, or is she coming?
oh, she frequently comes
I
at the
know,
last
but
second,
I
but,
just point out because you,
yeah, I always forget, yes. So Mike Speltz can vote for Tiffany if Tiffany doesn't come. So Eversource is up first, because Southgate subdivision called me earlier today and rescheduled for August 13th.
Perfect. Works for us. Who could be out one of them? This is a share. Oh, it's kind of broken. Can everyone hear me? Is this okay? Perfect. So good evening. My name is Connor Madison. I'm from GZA on behalf of Eversource, and I'm here with,
Travis Yando, Eversource Licensing and Permitting.
and we're here for a conditional use permit application for maintenance along an existing 326 and 380 transmission line, which crosses through town. The site locus is up here, so it goes from Dan Hill Road, it goes north and then a little east, all the way to Rockingham Road, or New Hampshire 28. So for project information, we've been here in the past, and it's similar work from what you have seen in the past. Every year, Eversource inspects their utility lines and their utility corridors, and the 380, 326 has popped up for a maintenance project of replacement of 18 utility poles from wood to steel. During inspections, they're looking for any cracking, any woodpecker damage that could introduce water or any pest to the inside and basically rot it from the inside out. And this year, 18 were flagged for replacement. So to go through them quickly, there's one replacement proposed off Dan Hill Road, 8 replacements proposed off Wiley Hill, 3 off High Range Road, and then 6 off Rockingham Road, or New Hampshire 28. Once again, this is similar work to the past. There's no new transmission lines. We're not pulling any new wire. And Eversource isn't clearing the right-of-way or trimming any trees. It is a steel or a wood to steel pole structure replacement.
Excuse me,
Yes.
is the plan on a particular page in here? So there's a lot of reflection, so I can't see it very well.
Yeah, they should be like at the end here. There's I kind of label
I
them
found
just
it.
as like
I
page
found it.
1 through 6.
I found it.
And we can weave through the plans as well. That's something that I've done in the past year as well. For state permitting, or the permitting that we've done so far, this project falls under a NHCES statutory permit by notification application. That was submitted on July 12th. So the town should have received a copy of that application, as well as an alteration of terrain permit application. July 12th was a big day for GZA and Eversource, so we submitted that as well. So the town should have received a large alteration of terrain permit application. So both of those are awaiting review. The statutory permit by notification is a permit application for the temporary wetland impacts throughout this project, and then the alteration of terrain is for upland impacts that are over 100,000 square feet. This project does have, or propose, impacts over 100,000 square feet with a permanent 16-foot wide gravel road, as well as a 100-foot by 100-foot gravel work area around the structures for the replacement. Once the structure is replaced, that work area is reduced to a 30 by 60-foot gravel pad, and that pad is left in there just for, in case of emergency, in case something does happen, that a bucket truck can go under the structure and get up to the top of the wire on a flat surface. So the remainder of that 100-foot by 100-foot pad will be restored. Both of these permit applications, the statutory permit by notification and the alteration of terrain permit application, require extensive coordination with New Hampshire Fish and Game and Natural Heritage Bureau. For New Hampshire Fish and Game, the majority of this project will be conducted in the winter time. So New Hampshire Fish and Game, we received a winter-only time of year work restriction for, it's October 16th to March 31st is their time of year restriction. What Fish and Game also requires is the exclusion of two structures, 326, structure 67, and 326, structure 45. They're actually overwintering turtle habitat. So what they've requested is that we install mats in the early season, so in October, in the growing season when the turtles are still moving around. And we install mats instead of waiting for frozen conditions when they're hibernating, so that they do have a chance to move around. That's their theory. So we do have two structures that will be having matting installed in hopefully early October, and then the rest of the project will be conducted October 16th to March 31st. As for Natural Heritage Bureau, they did request that we survey for 5 rare, threatened, endangered plants. So far, we have surveyed for 3 of them, and we're waiting for the flowering period for 2 other plants to finalize that survey. So we'll be working with them throughout those survey results to avoid and minimize the impacts as seen fit. For the construction, all of the work will follow the 2019 Best Management Practices Manual for Utility Maintenance Projects. What that includes is using timber matting for all wetland crossings, ensuring that that timber matting is clean before it comes onto the project and then over the course of the project so that no soil is getting introduced to the wetlands. GZA will be out there inspecting the silt sock and silt fence to make sure that they are in compliance with the manual. We'll also be out there ensuring compliance throughout the whole project for any permit conditions, such as the statutory permit by notification permit conditions or the AOT permit conditions. I think that sums it up. Once again, the schedule is fall 2024 to March 2025. And with that, I can walk through the plans. I know I tend to speak fast, so if you have any questions as well.
Is this gonna, on the right of way, encompass the whole town, or thought I read something, Scobie Pond down to Derry?
This project goes, it's kind of confusing because it's 2 different right-of-ways, but it goes from Dan Hill through, I would consider the center of Londonderry, and then ending at near Scobie Pond. So we'll be going from Scobie Pond all the way down to Dan Hill.
Just like Scobie Pond towards Derry?
Yep, yes.
Oh, that's where it's going, towards Derry?
I think of it as going from Scobie Pond, so the dairy section, from going from Scobie Pond down to, I believe it's Hudson. Is that?
Well, Hudson doesn't matter to us, I don't think.
What?
Yeah, either does.
Hudson that's another town.
Yeah, that was just my directional. So
Okay.
so on,
It seems like a short distance.
correct. Yes.
Okay.
This isn't the whole project. They've been here multiple times before
this is
with
what they're
different
gonna do
sections. They
now.
do one
Okay.
section at
Yes.
a time.
There's no, so,
Oh no, that's on me. Yeah.
and I was kind of corrupted by Massachusetts wetlands, so. Still trying to figure things out up here.
Yeah. So am I. Don't you worry.
Nothing unique to this section.
Nothing unique. We have been in this section in years past. We've actually been off Dan Hill, been off Rockingham, has been off Wiley Hill, as well as High Range Road actually last year. So there is existing gravel roads pretty much throughout this right of way. On the plans, you'll see them as like kind of black dots that follow. So that is an existing gravel road. And then we'll be utilizing as much existing gravel road as possible. We're not out there making any new gravel roads. If something is right next to it, we're going to utilize anything that's existing. So it has helped being in here in the past, having
Mhm.
those roads
Yeah.
stay.
Could you just detail a little bit, the effort, the measures you will take to block off the entrances that you're using so that we cannot make our ATV problem any worse than it
Even
already
worse,
is.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was a big topic for the last year's section when we brought this in front of the planning board. They actually made it one of our conditions, as well as kind of working more closely with the community. So our project services team was very involved throughout the portion of that project, and I believe a lot of the butters and landowners were very happy with our communication and level of just working with them. And then also for this specific project, anticipation of this, we have already identified a number of locations where either the gates are in poor condition or not functioning properly, and we do have plans to replace those. If I believe correct, there is one right off Wiley Hill Road that someone had torn apart and it's not working at all. So that's an example, but we will be replacing those as in this section where we do have proposed work.
Did those show on the plans?
I wonder if they do.
Probably, maybe not the permitting plans, but before construction, we update the plans with specific call outs for the contractors, and that will be one of our call outs that we will add.
Yeah, they did not make it on these plans that I'm seeing gate on there.
Would it be possible to add them to these plans? But what I'm trying to do is make it a matter of record, because we've had this conversation many times before, I think most effectively the last time, but
Mm-hmm.
with nothing to point to, there's no way for us to say, where the heck's the gate?
Yeah, no, we can definitely do that. But just to reiterate, during our constructability walkthrough, we already identified a number of these locations on this and have already put it in our bid with our contractors for them to replace those. So it is in the plan. And not only that, our project services folks, they have their own checklist for the contractors, and all these gate locations are also within that checklist as well, and they cannot close anything out on their end until those items are complete. But definitely we can follow up with an updated plans with the gates that we identified to be to either be installed or replaced.
Be great, thank you.
Could that be part of a checklist when you go in for maintenance as well? Because you mentioned one was disassembled, it's not the only one.
Well, I didn't catch the first part of that.
Could you, when you go in for service, when you need to send crews in the future after this work is done, could verifying the quality of the gates be part of the checklist as they go through? Because gates being taken apart is not a new thing.
Yeah. I can't really speak to that from the environmental department. We have a construction rep team and an operations team that do a lot more of like the day-to-day maintenance stuff and other services. But it's definitely something we can bring to the team to keep an eye out for.
Great.
As it is, it's been an ongoing issue for us throughout all of our projects. We go in and we restore these areas, and these ATVs and dirt bikes are able to somehow get around the gates or dismantle them. It happens time and time again. So that's why we also have our consultants to document this and try to fix these measures as needed and makes sense without having to come back over and over and over again.
Could you talk to the corridor as a whole? Trying to figure out that maybe it's different in different parts, but how many lines are in it? How many
So many.
There's a lot.
are you, have you done? And how many remain? I assume eventually they're gonna all get replaced from wood to steel.
Yes, correct. So in this 380 section, so there's kind of two right-of-ways. Pages, I think one is a separate right-of-way that only has 2 lines in it. One of them is currently all steel, as it was a new transmission line in 2017. That was the MVRP line. And then next to it is the 326. And the remainder of the project, I just call it the alphabet soup corridor. I think it has the S188, the Z119, the X, the MVRP, the 380, and the
Yeah.
326. The bottom two are completely steel. The MVRP is completely steel. The only remaining is the 380, 326, which I specifically don't have the numbers on of wood versus steel.
Yeah, I don't either. I do know that both, obviously, why we're here today is both of those lines are part of our asset condition replacement or ACR project plan. So, as Connor had described earlier, we go in and do yearly inspections for those rather than going in and replacing the whole entire line at once.
So we're not doing every single wooden pole on these two lines,
No,
just the ones that are faulty.
just the ones that are meet a certain rating threshold.
Any other comments other than adding the gates to the plan? Do we want to make a motion?
Ask a question?
Yep.
You mentioned the natural heritage was flagged, what, 5 plants?
Yes.
What about animals? Did they,
Yep. Yeah, fish and game. I just didn't count them, but I think there's about 4 animals that they flagged. It's
probably
most,
Blandings turtles?
yeah, they're
Octopus?
mostly just
Blandings.
non-game turtles and snakes. We have black racer, spotted, blandings.
Oh, black races too?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Makes-
yeah.
That makes sense.
Yep, you're. I think I've said this before. It's a real hot spot in this town for rare, threatened, endangered species.
There's
They're
gotta be a lot of Blandings out there, because I've already made 2 observations, and I've only been in town a short time.
yeah. If you're looking,
And they're
don't
on
look too hard in the right of way, but they're there. We in this right of way we have in the past have had biological monitors out there full time for work, just because of the occurrences of all of the rare, threatened, and endangered. So that's why Fish and Game was pretty happy with this being wintertime work during the inactive season.
Madam Chair, I'll move that we recommend the planning board approval of the conditional use permit with our one comment.
I'll second. Deb Levens.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion pass.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Have a nice evening.
And we will be in touch
Thank
with
you.
with those conditions. And thank you, Mike, for
Thanks, Dicker.
putting all that up there.
Like I said, the other one isn't coming until next meeting. So, old business, our regular event of approving Stantec bills. Again, we have one that they said we didn't pay, but I really don't think that we keep missing them. I don't think they send them, so we have 2, and they total $1,374, so that's for March and May. And I keep thinking, are we done yet? Because I thought the wetland permit was approved. Or was it just submitted? But I don't know what they're doing anymore. You know what I mean? That I thought everything was done, so. I don't know.
What does the invoice say? Just,
Well, the one for May is the only one I have the itemization. Coordination with Town of Londonderry on permit status, agreement to include in permit application, add Eversource agreement to permit application, complete and print permit application, travel to and from Londonderry to obtain town clerk's signature. That was for the wetland permit. Deliver a permit application to NHDES, travel to and from Londonderry. So, and then I didn't print the itemization on the March one, which was only $295. Oh, yes, I did print it, here we are. Revised plans per MEL comments, coordinate with Fish and Game, coordination with Town of Londonderry on Fish and Game information, coordination with Fish and Game issues with Town of Londonderry. So, those were all pertaining to the wetland permit. I know that was a sticking point back then.
Well, I move we appropriate,
$1,374.92.
okay, out of the Open Space Protection Fund.
Okay, motion by Deb, second by
I'll second it. Gene Harrington.
Jean. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstain, motion passed. So I'll get that up to finance to be paid.
Because these seem to keep coming and not be completely clear, I think it would be reasonable to ask them for an estimate of what they see left.
Left, yeah, I was thinking that too.
And then if
'cause the
something
last-
shows up that's part of that, okay, we saw that, and if it's not, then you say, what's going on?
Yeah, because a couple months ago, I asked for, can you just tell us what, it just seems like it's an ongoing, can you tell me what we've spent so far? Because
Right.
we're over what we estimated. That's why we have to approve these individually now. So, yeah.
Okay.
It's because I know, hoping to do, some work starting October-ish.
Sure.
Because much like Eversource, I'm sure it's gonna have a requirement to not work during the turtle season,
Right.
which we'd expect.
Yep.
The other old business maps are in. I
Oh,
brought
excellent.
a whole box there.
Great.
Which they're in little boxes, and when I asked him, I said, that's all I ordered? He says, that's the same amount. And all you have to do is lift that box and you'll know it's it's the same amount as the big box. I
Okay.
don't know how he got them in there, but it definitely weighs the same as the big box. So
And these are updated with the new trails?
these have the 2 new trails on it, so we're good with that.
Okay.
And the guy who orchestrated building the access bridge to the landing came in here to get my pictures and lists of other things that need to be done in the Musquash, and he's gonna coordinate with Home Depot, who volunteered they have a work team
Yeah.
to organize everybody together, and I gave him the names of 2 other people who had said, when you're doing a work day, call me.
Great.
So it might be a good turnout.
Yeah, excellent.
He also mentioned that some of the trails, like Sarabeth and, I can't remember what the other, could stand a little brush clearing, just widening, with a sickle or a weed whacker, and maybe some tree branch trimming. So the bike club guys are like
They're on.
at this all the time, so it's like, we'll harness them and join in.
Yeah.
And I also mentioned that Londonderry Trailways has trail tools that we can check out like a library book. We can borrow them and bring them back. I think it's the shed that's right by North School. They've got a big shed in their parking lot that's all full of tools. So if we can't get them to help, maybe we can at least use their tools.
Yeah.
So it's progress, but right now the flies are really bad in the woods, so nobody wants to go out there and work because you'll suffer.
Yeah, with the early rain, I've only been on the trailheads, and they have grown over a lot. I cleared, like, into Hickory Hill a little bit, but it's a big job.
Yeah, and this has been the summer of growing.
Yeah.
Everything has grown like crazy, which my garden looks good, but so do my weeds, so. It's all good, though. Anybody have anything for old business?
The boat launch, is that old business?
Yeah, that would be old business.
So, this is a bit of an update. Mike, has Justin by any chance talked to you about the boat launch?
Yes, mostly as of today, so I'm a late comer to what I think you're about to discuss, but yes, I'm mostly up to speed, I think.
Yeah, okay, I'll rely on you because you probably know more than I do for Justin. So we have had a problem getting this project to completion because it turned out that our application for a dock permit to DES never got there. They want it by snail mail, apparently, because they want to see the original signature. So after my patience was exhausted, I started calling, and it turns out they have never seen it. So they allowed me as an exception to submit it electronically, which I did on Monday. And they say they need 5 days to act on it, which would make it Friday or possibly Monday of next week. Which is perilously close to the expiration of the grant, which is the 31st of July. Even were we to get the permit, and there's no guarantee that they won't have other questions, or I guess, turn it down outright. The vendor that's selling us the dock wants a week to 2 weeks' notice before he can put it in, which puts us past the end of the grant period. So there is a possibility of asking for an extension. The requirement for the extension is that you submit a timeline of when you're gonna actually be done, which we're not in a position to do right now because we don't know what DES is gonna say and when they're gonna say it. There is a second issue, and that is that Justin pointed out to us a little bit ago that there's a set of requirements from the state that basically allows them, because they're spending federal grant money, to go back to the feds and say, we've complied with all of your rules. One of which is to acquire multiple bids for a project. And we only found the one vendor and used that one in the grant application. Justin is concerned that that's out of compliance with the federal rules. And I don't know if we can go back and make the case that he is the only vendor that has this sort of capability. But we have to for sure ask that question. So his recommendation, given those two problems, the timing of the permit and the question on the acquisition policy, is that we simply decline the grant. It's complicated by the fact that I think maybe you can confirm this, we made a 50% deposit on the dock, and I don't know what the policy is as far as return of deposit if we decide to cancel it. I mean, they haven't spent any time or labor on their own, but I don't know if they've ordered the material. So that would be a question that we'd have to ask them. We always have the option of, instead of paying for it with grant money, is to pay for it with our own money. In which case, we can decline the grant and take our time working with DES to get the permit, get it installed. but that would mean we've already put our own money up for the deposit with the idea that it'd be coming back to us when the grant is awarded. But we could, just suck it up and, pay for it ourselves. I think the total was about $26,000 with
Yeah, it sounds about right.
installation. Alternatively, if we don't think that's the best use of our money, we could just, decline the grant and scrap the project as long as we can get our deposit back.
Hmm.
Otherwise, we may be having to spend good money after bad, so to speak. So that's where things stand right now, waiting on DES. And then, once we hear from them, we can make a decision, but the other possibility, I'm sure that Justin would advise us, and maybe Mike, I'd like to hear your view on this, is to decline the grant now while the state still has at least a few days where they, I don't know if they'd be able to reallocate the money or at least stay in better stead with the feds.
Right, so, Madam Chair, if I may, I think there's a few things here. One is, my understanding is that this grant is through Gopher, which is I think what we are seeing in other areas is that there's an aggressive attempt to claw back Gopher funds to make sure that the state doesn't have to send them back to the feds. And I suspect that that is part of what is happening here, and why I am not particularly optimistic that we're going to get favorable treatment with respect to our extension request. I think that, as I understand it, and again, I'm coming late to this, as I understand it, if we're going to proceed with a launch of any kind, whether it's through this grant program or otherwise, we need the permit from DES. That's just a matter of regulatory jurisdiction. So I think there's a couple of different ways to proceed here. I mean, I think that I will, part of my role is to prevent projects like this from becoming administratively too administratively burdensome to the staff. And I think, these grant money is great, but I think that this is starting to become a little bit of an example of how it can come with some strings that aren't great either. I think that the council has previously accepted this grant anticipatorily, and so I don't think that there's harm. I don't think that this commission needs to necessarily decline or reject the grant tonight. I do think that with perhaps another week's time or so, some of this will become clearer. I also don't know what the council's appetite would be for what I'm about to say next, but I can tell you that the council does have unallocated ARPA money on hand. This is not a particularly large project. The council has recently allocated about a similar amount of money for playground and recreation improvements. That's sort of what ARPA is all about, is infrastructure projects. And so I would suggest it may be appropriate for this commission or representatives of this commission to approach the town council and see if there's an appetite to allocate the rest of the project through ARPA funding. I don't speak for the town council, I can't make guarantees, but I can tell you that there is unallocated money, and it would allow us to cut through a lot of these issues. It would not allow us to cut through the purchasing policy issue. I believe that we would need to do further work there to make sure that we can demonstrate this is the only vendor out there, or that we've secured other bids. But I think that may be less administratively burdensome, and I think it may be an appropriate use of those funds.
Is there a time limit on those funds?
So they need to be obligated by the end of this calendar year.
Oh, okay.
So it does give us more time to figure this out.
Well, and another wrinkle I'm thinking might be with the grant is if we're delayed in getting the permit, say we don't get it till the end of August or September, well, it would be silly to install a dock that we're gonna have to pull out in 3 weeks. Cause isn't October when cause they have to be seasonal?
Well, I had a phone conversation with the vendor, and there's another approach that they take, and they've used in other towns, and that is, it's a floating dock. So what you can do is, it just floats on 6 poles,
Right.
you know, I don't know, 3-inch poles, maybe that just get sunk into the bed of the pond. They rise up and down. So the problem is, if you let that in over the winter, the ice will move it around, and you'll bend the poles.
Right.
And, you know, you potentially crack the, well, so what they do is, they put an anchor out in the open water, and then just mark that with a buoy, and then anchor the pond, the dock, just float it in the pond over the winter, and the ice under it forms, it just floats it up, because
Right.
it's not being battered around.
So they pull out the poles?
Yeah, they pull out the poles would have to go back in the spring. He seemed to think that that's something that, you know, we volunteers could do, or the staff could do, that it's not a major undertaking, just to slink the.
Has it been done in any other community that we could talk to the people and see how it works?
Yes, I think it was one of the E-towns, Epping or Exeter, one of those, but that's what they do. But we could ask and, you know, get that, you know, sort of double check that, that really does work. So when I put the dock application in, I explained that, you know, this is something that we could do to meet the seasonal requirement. And, again, but it's up to them if they want to buy that. So there's a set of requirements to get a permit by notification. I think I explained this at our last meeting. Not all of which, we don't meet all those criteria, but in Marge's cover letter, I explained that we reason to believe that this is not a unreasonable request. It's unusual because this is a town putting a dock on state land. The right-of-way belongs to the state. It's access to public waters. So, you know, any one of those, I think there were 4 exceptions, you know, could turn around and bite us, which is, again, why we can't be all, you know, certain that we'll have a positive answer by the end of the week.
So, what should we do?
Yeah, well, I think we need to wait before we hear from DES. Then we need to get in
And I'll
contact
work
with
on
this
that.
guy and
Oh.
ask him, can we get our deposit back if worse comes to worse? Who can we talk to from other town that, you know, tethers them and find out how that works? And then, how quickly can you install the dock? And then we can go back to the state and
With the
see.
timeline?
Yeah, but if what Mike is advising us is correct, we may not get a favorable answer on that, and then, you know, we should probably seriously consider the scenario that he's outlined for us.
Yeah.
So which came first, the chicken or the egg? Did we have a request? We had a request for this kind of dock from someone,
Well,
and,
No, you
years
were-
ago, we had somebody request a fishing pier.
oh, okay.
He
Well,
was in a wheelchair and he,
Yeah, so my question is, what do we think the demand for this really is? I mean, we're working really hard for something that we don't even know if it's gonna be, how it's gonna be used, when it's gonna be used. You know, I remember some of the conversations, but it seems like it's been going on for a long time.
yes. Yeah, we've always been looking for ways to improve our,
So it's pretty much generated by us, the whole concept, okay.
yeah.
Is
Yeah,
this
well,
Skokie Pond?
we responded to a solicit for a
Small.
grant application.
Yeah,
Yeah, what got us going on this exact thing was somebody sent us the grant, or you
Yeah, I
found it, or
Became aware of
something.
it in some fashion.
Somehow, we were made aware of a grant
Oh,
for this,
Opportunity.
so we said, hey, wouldn't this be great? You know, an improvement to Kendall Pond, and then lo and behold, we got,
Stone Pond.
Scoby
or
Pond.
Scobie Pond, yeah.
The other thing that I hope is that it's gonna reduce the amount of sedimentation that we're dragging into the pond. Every time you
Launch.
put a kayak out there, you're gonna drag the kayak across the beach, and this way you can just go over a ramp. There's a little kayak launch platform at the end of it, you just use your paddles, you can pull yourself into the water with, you don't even have to get your feet wet.
Is that pond stocked by the fishing game? For some reason, it sticks in my head. I read somewhere about them stocking Scobie Pond, and I was really surprised. I said,
Yeah.
It
I don't
used
know.
to be, it used to be a real active
Fishing
thing. I
place.
don't know that they do anymore.
It's kind of, I went looking for it, and it's sort of in the back of my house. Well, Lord and Commons.
Hmm.
And I found, you have to kind of go on the electrical service company road or something, and I found it. It's pretty small, but I then,
Yeah.
I thought I read somewhere that they do stock it. So
Oh, it could
maybe
be.
if they do, maybe Fish and Game would be interested in helping out.
Yeah, I don't know, they're pretty strapped.
Yeah.
You never know.
Well, they've already helped out by allowing us to do it on
Yeah.
their land.
If we withdraw from the grant this season, is this a one-time grant, or could we apply next year, and would they look unfavorably upon us for
No,
withdrawing this year if we
these
applied
are
again?
COVID-related funds, basically, and
Mhm.
that program is done.
Mm.
The Governor's Office for Economic Recovery and
Emergency relief and recovery.
Emergency Relief and Recovery. And it's an unusual thing, so there's a chunk of money came up, and so I can remember there being some debate about it. So, an unusual situation where the New Hampshire executive, the governor's office, is running this money instead of what would normally be the case where you'd have the legislature involved and that sort of thing. So it was a very much an ad hoc thing that was designed to get a bunch of money in and get it out. And that's what they've been trying to do, and that's why they're,
It was very controversial when you put Gopher in place.
yeah.
Very, very controversial. Especially with the Democrats.
Yeah, they were reluctant to see that much money going basically to one guy, and, you know, obviously he has a good staff that's administering it, but it's not like working with one of the, like, you know, Department of Environmental Services or Department of Energy, where, you know, they administer grants all the time, so this was, that's part of what's made it challenging, I think.
All right, so I
They
guess-
did move a lot of money in a hurry.
So I'll just keep plugging along this week, see what
Yeah,
we can get
until we
done.
hear from them, and then go back to the vendor, and then, you know,
All right,
I think we need to huddle with Justin and Mike and decide how to proceed. I guess it might be good, because time is of the essence here, and we aren't meeting until August 13th, to at least have a consensus of the commission that whatever you think is the right thing to do here. You know, I would say, you know, I'm not sure I would support digging the money out of the conservation fund. Part of for the reasons that, you know, Deb alluded to, but I would support, you know, trying to work with the town council and see if we can get the money that way. So if that's a consensus, then
yeah,
that's, you
it
know,
seems
how
reasonable.
we can proceed.
Everybody's,
And our chair can act for us.
Yes,
Do we need to put that into a vote, or do we?
I don't think so.
all right. Sounds good. Old business, our public comment and policies and procedures, did you bring copies of it?
I have one copy for,
'Cause I emailed Mike, and Has he been gone this week?
Yes, he's away.
Okay.
Yes.
That would explain, because I
I-
asked him to bring paper copies so we could look at it.
Well, my apologies for that.
Somebody
No,
else,
you wouldn't have,
somebody else sent it by email in the last
Yeah.
day or two. I saw it,
I got it.
but did you get,
The markup?
yeah.
yeah, oh, okay.
So what I can tell you, Madam Chair, and again, I'm kind of coming in, partway through here, or mostly through, it seems like, but as I understand it, there's a set of draft changes that is circulated. It looks like there are there's limited markup. There's a red item addressing public comment. And the legal advice that the board has received is the same legal advice that, the planning board has received, which is public comment at land use board meetings needs to be carefully controlled to make sure that there isn't any kind of an issue with respect to a pending application. And so her suggestion in the email that was forwarded to you, Madam Chair, earlier this week, is that the draft document that was circulating looks pretty good. That her one other piece of feedback was that I think that they refer in some places to bylaws and other places to rules of procedure. Pick one and make it consistent. But public comment at the beginning, she opines, could create a little bit of an issue. Her suggestion was to do it at the end. But ultimately, it's the board's decision how to proceed. And that's the extent of the feedback.
What about when a project comes up? Can we allow people to speak to that project when it's happening? Because that's when it's relevant. It's not always relevant at the end of the meeting, because it might be that people need to explain something about flooding in their backyard or whatever that would be relevant to the project. And we might not, if we didn't know about it, we might approve something that maybe needed a little more attention.
So I think I want to make it clear that I'll answer the question, but I want to make it very clear that I'm not giving the board legal advice because I'm not the board's attorney. But what I can tell you is that I think the nightmare scenario that has been, that we've been concerned about in the context of the planning board, any land use board, this board, ZBA is quite different because it's quasi judicial. But this, with regard to this board, if there were discussion about something that hasn't been noticed, and there were comments made by the board or there were decisions made, that could be a problem. It's a little bit less of a concern here because, with some limited exceptions, this board is, we're not talking about the management and control of conservation property. That is purely within this board's jurisdiction, and you have authority that no other board in town has in that way. But with regard to the land development process, I think the concern is that you're talking about an application and interested parties don't have a chance to participate in that because they haven't received notice that it's going to be discussed. By the time something gets to the planning board, you have abutter notifications that are going out in the mail. To my knowledge, that doesn't happen at the Conservation Commission level. And so you just need to be really careful that you're not talking about things that aren't on the agenda, and that you are, if there is public comment about something that's on your agenda, that the board isn't necessarily reacting to that or providing a response. It's a little difficult to talk about in the abstract, but I think that's the main concern, is just that we are talking about people's property rights in this sphere, and we just want to make sure that we don't expose the town to any kind of liability. I think maybe that's why the attorney is suggesting at the end as opposed to, you know, at the beginning. I don't know what this board's practice has been. If you have a, you know, they're not noticed as public hearings, the individual agenda items. I haven't, you know, I've been to a lot of CONSCOM meetings over the years. I can't recall whether you would entertain comment on an agenda item from a member of the public. But I think you just need to be careful, you know, like it's been said before, there is no prohibition on having public comment at a land use board. It just, there's a different set of issues that you need to consider.
Well, I would say typical public comment is never about agenda items. It's always about something else, that somebody is bringing a concern or a question to us. And the other thing that I think needs to be kept in mind is that we're strictly advisory. We have no power
Correct.
other than, again, on managing our own conservation land.
Correct.
So we would not be making decisions.
And I think that's why it's a little bit less of a concern here than it is at the planning board.
Right, and, because I think we're a different animal than planning or zoning.
Correct. I would agree with that.
So how does having it comment at the end reduce that danger at all, other than wearing people down? I mean, you know,
Keeping them past their bedtime.
you know, whether you make the comment at the beginning or at the end, isn't the danger the same?
I think her and again, I don't want to speak too much about her privileged communication, but I think it was more along the lines of keeping the meeting moving along, making sure that we can get in a timely fashion to the agenda items, and not getting sidetracked or derailed. But as a logical matter, I don't disagree with what you're saying, Mike.
I would like to suggest, because we do have some people that make arrangements ahead to come
Right.
to make their presentations. Like tonight, there were supposed to be 2 different presentations early on. I would suggest that we schedule public comment in front of old business.
I was just
So it
thinking
is
that.
not the opening item on the agenda, it's not the final item on the agenda. It's in the middle of the agenda. And that way, people that have made appointments are not being held up.
Yeah.
And people that want to make a public comment aren't being held all the way to the end.
That's a very good suggestion.
It seems logical. You know what I mean? A logical place to put it.
You know, we have old business at every meeting. We might not have somebody scheduled earlier, but hey, we just say public comment occurs just before old business. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I've observed over the years, Madam Chair, that you are fairly liberal in terms of moving things around and you know, erring on the side of allowing people to weigh in if they need to. I think that's a good flexible approach.
Well, and we can remain flexible because we're not putting it in our procedures where that
That's true.
public comment, it's to, does it say managed by the chair or something like that? So we can, if it's not working, we can change it. But it seems like a good start.
And, you know, the chair still runs the meeting.
And that's what this
Yeah.
paragraph
so
that we added.
If the nightmare scenario were to pop up at Sugley Head where somebody wants to make a public comment, you know, the chair can remind that person that we can listen, but we won't be able to comment. Or, you know, you need to limit your remarks to one of the presentations you just heard. I mean, you have the ability to do
Right.
all those things and to, you know, allocate time, you know. You have 3 minutes. So.
So if we want to adopt she made some other little reference corrections.
Right,
So
so
do we have to just vote on that now and say we vote to enact that?
I don't, I think that makes sense. The one thing I'm not prepared to answer is whether there is, if you have some obscure provision in your current rules of procedure that govern how you adopt and amend rules of procedure.
That's it, that's all we have right there.
Okay, so you don't have rules of procedure at the moment?
No, and
Okay.
I was making myself crazy looking for them, because, like she mentioned, sometimes we call it bylaws and sometimes we call it procedures, so I'm looking for two documents, and there's really only one.
Right.
So I'm 100% for picking a name.
Yeah,
And I don't know if you have a recommendation, should it be procedure, should it be bylaws?
I think you should call them rules of procedure. I think the bylaws is,
It seems more like a
yeah.
procedural thing
Yes.
than a bylaw thing.
The other thing that I would just underscore is similar to, the chair runs the meeting, the board can take up its rules of procedure at any point in time. So as far as I'm aware, so it's not cast in stone. Like you said, if you adopt a rule of procedure that doesn't work, you amend it. So, yeah, I think that works. The one thing I would just flag for your attention, Madam Chair, is that at this, as drafted, what the public comment paragraph currently says is public comment will be invited at the beginning and the end of each meeting. Each meeting, public comment will be moderated by the
Okay.
chair. We can make that amendment to conform with what I think I understand the board's consensus to be
Prior to old business.
prior to old business.
Okay, yeah,
But it needs to be, it should be a formal vote.
okay. Yeah, that's why I was hoping we had paper copies so we could,
And if you want to defer action on it until next meeting, that's fine too.
Well, I would abstain because I'm having computer issues and I could not open my town mail. I mean, it has to do with the screen, it has nothing to do with the system.
well,
But
the only
I couldn't
change
get it
was
in.
a two-sentence paragraph. That everything else was from before, but there was a question whether we actually voted that into effect at some point. We're not sure that there was an official vote, so we're killing two birds with one stone, basically. We're just,
Although the last line of that draft
Since there was
refers
voted.
to our existing rules of procedure from July of, I think,
February.
2017.
from 17th.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, that's what we found, didn't we find that?
it
It wasn't,
don't know, it seems like I was
Very-
using
very end on
something,
changing the,
I see that, yeah. I mean, it could be that that's a draft, that it was a draft that was kicking around as well.
because I only have copies that say draft on it, which doesn't mean that it never was voted, but I could not find anything that didn't say draft on it.
seems like we're acting in good faith here.
We're-
And as per due diligence.
We're gonna assure legitimacy by doing this.
But I think waiting until next meeting, when we can all have had it in front of us, and this is not an
Complete and
urgent
not
matter,
read.
makes sense, yeah. There are two typos in there too, and I'm not sure who will fix them. One of them, the word is became if, and I
Oh.
can't remember the other one.
We'll clean that up. And I have the December 2017 minutes here.
I don't know what month it was, though, Mike, and it was, or did you have it?
It says December 12th, 2017.
Well, then, my other question too is, once we approve these and they're enacted, where is a copy? Is it on our page of the
We'll
website?
upload it. Yeah, we'll upload it to that page.
Okay, because I
Yeah.
want it to be somewhere
Agreed.
where we can find it next time.
And the public, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
Is it-
most importantly.
I mean, is that something that should be posted on Facebook too, or, because we have that
I think-
Facebook page?
Do we, yeah, we can, can we like keep it as a about us type thing, so it doesn't get lost?
Maybe somebody can, I'm not sure I can, but
You know, 'cause if you post
I'll
something,
look-
it
I'll
moves,
look into-
it moves
yeah,
down the
sure,
page. but
yeah, it does.
There's gotta be a place where you can,
Yeah, there is. You
You
can
can
add,
pin
you can
it.
add files
Yeah.
to like a
Pin
group
it.
page. Yeah.
thank you.
Don't know how to
I'm
do
not a
it.
Facebooker. Yeah, all right, so if we just get that all finalized, and we'll do it next,
Yeah, I think that,
August 13th.
you know, I mean, it's public, there's a lot of discussion about public comment. I don't think, you know, in general, we don't need to overthink it. I think that we just need to be mindful. It's not, public comment is certainly not something to be afraid of. It's something that I think, you know, can be very beneficial as long as it's managed correctly.
All right. Everybody good with that?
Very good.
All right. Awesome. Any other old business?
That's new business.
That was new? Well, that was old.
Okay.
Well, I should have probably had the
That's new.
June financials done by now, but somehow I lost the middle of the month. So
Well,
I will get them for the next meeting.
yeah, I wouldn't worry about it.
Speaking with your treasurer hat on, I noticed that those rules of procedure do not provide for a treasurer. They provide
That's,
only for a
yeah, but
chair
that's
and
part
vice.
of the state, I mean, that's part of the RSA 36A. It's in the Association of New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissioners, that set of rules they have, that's where it comes from.
So Mike, I think, is suggesting that
We
we
put it in.
amend the proposed rules of procedure to add another officer, treasurer.
That can certainly be done. I think, I'm unfamiliar with that RSA as it pertains to the treasurer. I suspect that it makes reference to the town treasurer having custody of the
think.
conservation.
I don't know, we've just always
funds.
treated, there should be somebody on the commission that's paying attention and getting back to the commission with the information.
Right, I think, yes, I think that role is important. I think that treasurer may be a little bit of a misnomer, because I think
Yeah.
that, at least as far as I understand it, you don't have custody of any
No.
money.
No,
But, yes, I think it's, I don't know what the right word would be, but it
yeah,
does,
well, we can go back to
Chair
look at
should appoint a liaison to the town
Yes.
financial director.
Yeah.
that sounds. But there is a reason we did it, when we did it, so, you know, and we called the treasurer, so, I don't know.
I mean, it's not wrong, it's not,
But
Gonna
I'm
get
just
us in
saying, I
trouble.
think it came from another directive from
Yeah.
outside of the town.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, just even clubs and whatever have treasurers.
Yeah.
right.
So,
I will see what I can find out, too.
yeah, I was gonna say,
If,
we can
I
just,
know where the handbook is, I don't always know where other things are,
actually, I can.
At my
look mine,
house.
too.
still.
All right. Any other old business? New business, some folks from Fish and Game are doing research on fisher cats, and they want to get our permission to live trap them and track them in locations around town.
We put a collar on them.
I wasn't positive how they're doing, if they're gonna put a clip in their ear or collar or whatever, but I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
It works.
As long as I'm not the guy that has to ask them nicely to do that.
Yeah,
They're
teeth and
ordering.
claws, I don't think so. All right, I will tell them that we're good to go with that.
And they are out there, I've seen the tracks.
Yeah,
I've seen the fisher.
I haven't, I used to have some in my yard, and I haven't seen them in years.
No, I'm talking about in the musquash.
Oh, yeah.
So have they picked where they're gonna go look, or is it gonna be conservation areas?
It's
or-
conservation areas, which is why they're asking our permission.
Gotcha.
So it'll be interesting to see the report. That's all I have for new business, other than if Mike Bezekian was here, I would ask if Richard's name has been ordered.
I was wondering the same thing as I was sitting here. I made a note to
Okay,
follow up
thank
on that.
We have a potential trash problem in Kendall Pond.
Oh,
We had a neighbor who's been incredibly diligent about putting the trash out forever. 3 weeks ago, they didn't. 2 weeks ago, I did,
oh,
and Waste Management didn't pick it up. And this week, it wasn't put out again. So for 3 weeks, it's
Piled up.
piling up.
I know Waste Management's been having trouble, either with recycle or trash pickups. They've had some equipment failures.
This is just regular trash, but I don't know who the neighbor was. I mean, we got rid of that bin when we first redid the parking lot, and the neighbors asked that we put it back, and we did,
Yeah,
with the understanding that they'd take care of it, and they've been great.
yeah, they have.
But for 3 weeks now, it's just piling up, and by next week, it's gonna be on the ground.
Summer vacation, maybe?
Maybe.
Maybe
What night, what's trash night?
Monday morning.
We can ask them to pay a special visit.
Okay. I wonder what's,
I mean, Waste Management's not gonna do it unless we put it on the street. The bin doesn't stay on the street.
Is it, oh, it's in the,
It gets pushed back near the kiosk, and then
Okay.
a neighbor brings it up to the street on Sunday nights, or Monday morning, I'm not sure
Okay.
which.
we'll check it out.
I hope he's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I can make a note to myself to be sure I get there early enough on Monday to bring it up next week, but
Mm.
that's when they do South Road.
Any other new business?
I'm not sure if it's new, but what about getting emails on these reports and stuff before the meeting? Do they send
You're-
them
We
out?
typically do.
Yeah, do you not have your town email? Because that's
What do I
where,
see about that?
who does he see?
Kirsten Hildenon
Yeah,
from my office.
And this week, we didn't get anything sent out early because that was when the whole Microsoft and security
Oh.
security thing was.
yeah, yeah, but at least
But normally we
Mike
do,
let us know that there was
at least a
issues.
few days in advance.
Yeah,
I think we probably would have got it had he not been on vacation, but the day that he could have done it, he couldn't.
it was, right.
Yeah.
Well, if you could send me the copy of the procedures,
Okay,
rules of procedures.
all right. Did anybody else not get it? Well, obviously Richard didn't get it,
Yeah, that one came, I think, from Kelly.
did it? Oh, yeah, because,
It wasn't Mike.
okay. I'll just send it to everybody just in case.
Yeah, Kelly sent it out yesterday.
All right. Anything else? Ray, do you have anything you wanted to say?
Be
polite, I'm sorry if I woke you up.
Ray Bresnan, 3 Gateway Drive. First off, thank you for what you folks do. You're doing a fine job. I guess the discussion on public comment, my opinion of it, it is important. I don't think it should sway your opinion, but it certainly should be something that should be listened to from the general public. And just, the only thing I just wanted to ask is the management of conservation land, which falls under your,
Duties.
yeah, which is a considerable job when you look at the acreage totally in the town of Londonderry. My concern is there potential for any water underneath that ground, and should we even consider that, or is it being considered? I'm not
Considering
sure you have to answer
accessing
that.
it? Do you mean, are we considering accessing the water?
Well, no, in other words, geological study as to what is in the ground, potential, if there is any potential, there may not be. But with all the things that the town is looking at, I think it's just something that perhaps, not necessarily you folks, maybe others should look at. But one piece of property particular is over by St. Mark's Church? What's that road that goes off at an angle there?
Griffin.
Griffin.
Oh, okay.
Which was like, I think, conservation or the town paid $750,000 for whatever, which is also part of headwater for
Beaver Brook.
Beaver Brook. You know what I mean? And so it's a lot of wetland, but a wetland is important. And so I just wonder how you as a board kind of looks at that and whether you have, how much say-so you have in what that land is being used for. That piece of land in particular, you know? I mean, it is a valuable piece of land, it's wetland, you know, creatures live out there. It's a headwater for Beaver Brook, and I don't think there's any trails or anything out there.
No.
No, and maybe it's not even practical.
I can try to answer part of that for you.
Sure.
Two things, really. So, one of our duties is to conduct an inventory of the natural resources of the town. And we meet that obligation through the open space study. And additionally, we have the water quantity study. And both of those address aquifers, not necessarily, that we rely on the state's data to determine where favorable gravel wells could be and where aquifers are. We don't commission geologists to go out and do it. So given that data, we are also, every time we do a conservation project and try to add additional conservation land, we look at water resources as an attribute in helping us determine whether it's a worthy project to go forward with and whether it's competitive for a grant. You know, this land right behind us here, you know, it's how we got that protected. So, example, the Lithia Spring project where we put in provisions if it looks at all like there's potential in the future to withdraw water. We put in provisions in the easements and the restrictions on the land to make sure that the easements or restrictions don't prohibit us from doing that.
Right.
So we go that far. That's pretty much, those two things are what we do.
Yeah, so when we're speaking of natural resources, there's water, there's soil, there are trees, and other things that are natural resources within the boundaries of Londonderry. And I think you folks should have some sway in, or at least input as to what is that's being used for, or is it being protected, you know? Stormwater runoff, well, you know, from, quite frankly, we got a couple of mining operations in town. And I'm not finding fault necessarily with them, but that impacts a lot of times where the water goes. It ends up in the lowest point, which is wetland, which we do need to protect. So I think we all just need to pay attention and make sure that we're protecting our natural resources. And that's what you folks do.
We try.
And thank you. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you.
Minutes?
We could do minutes. Which he made me think of something and then I lost
Oh,
it.
sorry.
Something he said was like, reminded me. Oh. What about removing the causeway? Where does that stand?
Ironically, we've been waiting for dry weather. To me, it's been unusually dry, but I saw the statistics from the beginning of January, and we're actually ahead for the year-to-date.
Yeah.
We're behind this month, but even the
That's because we
last,
doubled up last month.
yeah, the last quarter or so. And, you know, the streams certainly look dry, the wetlands themselves that are collecting the water are less so.
Mm.
But we've been going back and forth with DES and our wetland scientists that come up with an approved plan, and it's a good time for me to check back in and make sure we're ready to go. But we consistently were saying kind of end of August
Oh,
is usually
okay.
the driest period. So,
Right. Just, I was curious all of a sudden, but, all right, minutes, which are actually, we didn't have a meeting last time, so this is from 4 weeks ago.
Oh, I'm still in the wrong place. I looked at them, you sent me those, so I had those. Did anybody see anything?
as soon as Deb stops moving her cursor, I will move we accept the minutes of, what is it?
June 25th.
June 25th.
Seconded.
Okay, motion by Mike, second by Jean. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain?
I abstain. Susan Mallon.
Susan and
Bob Maxwell.
Bob have abstained. Motion pass.
I'll move we adjourn.
Is this your post-meeting game?
No, I don't know what it is. No, that's AI. Copilot is Microsoft's AI.
Oh, please.
So did we second that?
Yes.
Okay.
David seconded it.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Oh, that one.